Hey, welcome. Good to see you. So today I wanted to continue the sprint. Ah, should I call it a lecture? No, it's not really a lecture. So we're talking about sprint and getting sprint working in the game, and we've gone through making the control rig animation, animating in Unreal, and getting that to a good spot. We've got our forward and we've got our diagonals. But now we need move sprint start, move sprint stop. And I wanted to show you how I'm approaching those. And hopefully, I know I've showed them in another video, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth with it right now. So hopefully, you will learn why I do it this way. And hint, I'll give you a hint. It's because I'm lazy. I mean, I'm creating this project by myself, and um, like getting a brand new fresh animation in and working on that and making it seem um, like it transitions well from running to sprinting, and that animation sits right there in between that accelerates you up to that speed and then decelerates you down to the lower speed from sprint to run. I feel like that would be more work than I want to do, quite frankly. So here I've just made an additive approach. So I believe that if you can be more efficient with your work, because this is actually a pretty quick process, um, and, and basically if you can get an adjustment on top of existing animations with a minimum amount of work and achieve more or less the same effect um, in a much shorter amount of time, then I think that's a really good approach. Because when you're working in the industry on a game, you're going to have to come up with creative solutions all the time and figure out how can you get the amount of work that you have done at the quality level that you want to get, that players will still enjoy, and you're not taking them out of the experience. So here I've come up with, and it's not my invention, but we're using a an additive animation playing over top our move animation. So we're just gonna hook up our move animation, and we're gonna play. This is our we're in the state move sprint start. So this is the animation that plays when we're moving from our normal run animation, and then we're getting into our sprinting speed. We're going to speed this up and put our character on the side, make this a little bigger. There we go. Let's play. Oop, we were playing. Now let's play. Okay, so we're running. Make this a little smaller so we can see the state machine working. All right, now we're running. No, we're not. Now we're running. So when I hit the sprint button, that's my left shift, and we just move. Huh, since we don't have an animation playing, we're actually never taken out of that state to go into sprint. So we're just playing the blend space. Let's go there. It's this cache pose from this state. It should play here. Okay, yeah. So we can follow along with this little green X over here. So when the green X is all the way at the top, we're sprinting. And when it's just a little bit above middle, then we're running. We're hitting sprint, and that is just a transition from one speed to another. And you can see our X move in the Y axis in that blend space. So when we're transitioning, again, there's nothing. So let's go ahead and disconnect our sprint stop also. So it's the you're still moving forward, but you're transitioning back to running from sprinting. And we may not kick you out of here, so we'll see what happens. So running, and you can see that's just a blend from one animation to another. Same thing, we're blending back one animation to another. So, I mean, that's not bad. It works, it functions, but we want a little bit more oomph into the start of that so that we can have an animation that helps you, as the player, know that you have pressed that button. So not only do you know as the player that you've pressed the button, but the character that you're playing shows something that indicates to you what is happening when you press that button. So I think that's an important experience for the player, so that when they press a button, something happens. So we have a bunch of things happening right now. So our speed kicks up, the camera pushes in, we play our sprint animation, which has a couple of camera shake notifies in there right before the footsteps. So there's a few things that are playing there already that help us know that we're in sprinting. But on the animator side, what we want to do is just give a little bit more performance and information there visually. So it isn't just a blend back and forth. Okay, that was a long explanation, but let's get started. So let's review our current sprint enter sprint start additive animation. Let's double click that. And first thing I want to show is that over here we are using, it is an additive. So if it's green here, it's additive. Let's find a non-additive animation. Still additive. I might find one. Okay. This is a non-additive animation. So you can see how the color difference, like one's like this maroon or whatever. And then we've got a green there. Okay, so you're looking at a green animation, you know that it's an additive animation. So here, we're looking at this additive. What we're doing is that we're playing this animation on top of that, just that blend from running to sprinting. So if we hook these up, compile, play. So we're running, and now we're sprinting. And you can see how that additive animation really changes um, that that feeling of you're trying to like use and put in maximum effort to change your speed, run a little bit faster. So let's focus on the sprint start, and we're going to create that from scratch. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to create it. So first thing I want to do is get out of the game. I'm going to come over here to our animation where we have our run forward. I'm going to double click that. See what's in our start. Run start. Huh. Oh, okay. I think they're in our additives. Locomotion. Yeah, sprint start. There it is. Okay. Just trying to look for that. So we have our unarmed. We're just going to throw everything in this folder though. We're going to duplicate this animation. Actually, we're not going to duplicate this animation. We're going to open it up. We're going to find the pose that we want to work from, which is probably the most neutral pose, which is going to be that one right there. So really, I'm not worried about where the legs are. I'm more concerned about where the arms are. Um, I'm thinking about using this as a starting point, but let's just create an asset, an animation. Um, create, so create asset, create animation, reference pose. You can use the current animation if you wanted to. And you can use the current pose, which is what I was about to do. But I think I'll use the reference pose. We'll save that. We'll say test out add for additive. So I know visually, like if I'm just looking at it, I know it's going to be an additive animation. So what I like to do here is first just make sure that I'm going to set up as an additive. So come over here under additive settings. I'll say local. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. They've got this old school way of doing it that existed before the new ways, so I usually do it this old school way. But and the new way I think to do it is a frame from this animation. You can just say frame 0. But the old way to do it is you basically have like this animation somewhere or another animation somewhere you want to reference from, and you're going to reference from that frame. A frame in that animation. So I would hit select the animation frame, and usually I would create this animation twice. So why don't we do that? Duplicate this again, and I would call this one the pose version, and double click that, make sure it's not an additive. Whoops, there we go. And save that. So then I can just drag that in, and I know that we're using that pose on frame 0. So that's the same thing if you're going to use frame from this animation on 0, because they're the exact same frame, exact same pose. So then we want some frames to be able to animate on. So we're just going to right click up here on this slide, time slider here. And we're going to say append at the end. We're going to say frames. Let's undo that. I'm going to say 29 frames because I want it to be 1 second. We already have 1 frame. There we go. So it should be 0 to 30. So there we are. So now we have a 30 frame animation that we can work with, a 1 second animation. So what we can do right now is go ahead and just drag this in and get it set up so that we know that any changes that we make here, we will use those immediately. So let's watch this play through. Some other settings I want to just check or make sure that it is not looping and we're not ignoring it as the relevant animation. So if you had like multiple animations in here, you could, well, like this one, we have like multiple additives in here. What you could do is say ignore all the rest of these, and there's like a master animation that it's supposed to follow. And when that animation reaches key points in the animation based off your transition rules, then it'll transition. But there we know that it's only using one animation at that point. So we know we're using our test sprint start add there. So if we come here, we should see it play through and transition. There it goes. So since we don't have anything going on in that additive, it isn't doing anything to modify the animation. So when we know the rule, well, we don't know it, I haven't set it, but the rule is just automatic. So that means that when that animation is done playing, then it'll transition. And it might use this, I can't remember exactly, but 0.2 seconds from the end of that animation, it'll start transitioning out because it's blending, it's not just popping. Okay, let's go back to this animation and we can just leave everything running. I think that'll be okay. What we want to do is usually the way I go about this, I'll select the pelvis and we can start animating here. So I'll make this bigger. And usually what I do, I'll set some keys on the start and end. And since we haven't moved anything, nothing, those basically are like 0 keys. But so I just treat this like in animation, like I would if I was animating Maya or animating on Control Rig and Unreal and Sequencer. I'm going to change this to world settings. That way I know I'm moving world forward or up or down or rotating world forward, up or down, left or right. Go back to move. And then here, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a test. We're going to move him down and set a key. And then we're going to move it up and set a key. And then we're just going to come back and see what that did. I don't know if you noticed that, but let's get this viewer up again. Let's watch here in our viewer. So we're running, now we're sprinting. So you may have seen our character move up and down there. So if we go and play that one more time and type slow-mo 0.25, now we hit sprint, we go down, and then we go up, and then we settle back at 0. So what we want to do is try to have we take a screenshot. Let's see, where's my pause button? Let's pause it there. We'll take a screenshot and draw over. So what I'm thinking is that when you start running, to increase your speed, you're gonna like lean forward more. So we'll lean the character down a little bit. We'll push the character down a little bit, and we can move the character forward a bit, and then we'll reset back to 0. So we'll rotate forward to really help get that kickoff into that burst of speed that we want to push into. We'll push the character down a little bit to dig into the ground a little bit more, and then we'll push the character forward a little bit, and then we'll settle all that back at 0. Okay, let's go ahead and work on that. We're coming over here. So we want to push the character down, which we're doing, but I don't like how far we're pushing down, so we'll just bring it back up. I'm going to turn these off so we're not snapping. But I'm holding shift so that we stay on the axes that we're moving on. I'm not too worried about what these keys look like right now, that they're linear keys. So I'm pushing down. We're going to copy this, paste it over, move it. We're pushing down and staying down. Then we're going to come back up. We don't want to go up that high or that far forward. So we'll stay forward as we're coming up, and then we'll reset. But I also don't want to come too high off the ground because my legs are going to have to stretch. But I think it'll be okay because our run animation is probably a little bit lower. Okay. So we just set 1 and set some automatic keys. We'll get some nice overshoots and ease ins and ease outs so that we're slowing into our new positions or accelerating out of them. That's what that looks like. That's the motion that's going to be added on top of our sprint blend transition from run to sprint. So we could, so like as soon as you press the button, one of the things I think about is that a lot of times when you're controlling the player character, the the player is the one that's thinking about what to do, not the character. So when the player hits, say, jump or sprint or something, they don't. I don't think that the player really wants to see like a wind up and then they go into that action because like all the winding up and the thinking about that action has happened in the player's head already. So by the time they press the button, they want like execution from the character. They don't want them to rear back and do a big anticipation or wind up and then get into the action. Um, that works for some games where you like really want like the weapon to be a lot slower and hit a lot harder, and there's kind of like that risk reward playoff. But here, just generally, when the player presses that button, they want their speed to be faster. They want to jump, things like that. So here, I don't want to play too much into the let's do in anticipation, but let's play with it anyway. See how it goes. I don't think it'll be bad because there's nothing in this animation that's going to dictate that we're slowing down the player's transition into um, sprinting and actually the gameplay behind the speed increase. It's a little hard, but we're not looking for perfection. I don't want to noodle this forever. We got to set a key. So unlike when you're animating in sequencer, you have to set a key. There isn't a button that allows you to auto key. At least I'm not seeing one. I don't see one. And that's fine. And when you set a key, it's going to set them on all. But what's nice is that if you want to, you can go ahead and like come in here and middle mouse click, and that'll set a key, and then you just like move it around. It won't set a key on every single curve, which is nice. We're getting that push forward pretty fast. I think we could push it, keep pushing it. Oops, that's down. We can keep pushing it forward here. And then slowly like keep pushing forward into it a little bit more, like right there, and then will come back. Okay, let's play that. That looks better. But I think we can kick into that a little sooner. So we're going to try these tools over here. I think I showed this in another video. This is the retiming tool. We're just going to set up some positions to block off our keys that we don't want to move. And then we're going to kind of scale these back. So when I'm animating like this, um, I don't know what they call this. I guess just an editor view or the preview mode. Um, I'm not worried about like where these keys land, like if they're on frames or not. I just want the motion to look good at that point. So we'll get out of that retime tool, come down a little bit, like clean that up. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So we're really pushing into it. So we can test. So let's test. Why not? Make sure we're looking at our character. Yeah, see, that feels better already. Got a little bit of push and shift on our pelvis. I think it's going a little bit too low. And now we can start working on rotation. Let's clean that up a little bit. Yeah, it's a little too low. So let's bring these up. Scale these up. Bring my anchor point up here. Move that up like that. Cool. Let's play that real quick. Let's get there faster. Let's also set a key here. What I said I was going to move backwards here. And that'll help it like really shoot forward. That seems pretty severe. And I guess because we're blending into it too, we could start us back a little further. Let's see how that looks. Let's play. That's what I love about Unreal. You just make a change, test it. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Come back. Go and save this. And then we'll work on some rotation. We already have some keys here. So we know we want the character rotating forward. I'm not sure which ones these are. Let's call this 20. Nope. Pitch. That would be, nope. That's fine. Like you would think, but that's cool. 20. Now we're rotating forward. So here we have Animatic. We can pull that back a bit. Do kind of the same thing. Hit forward hard. And then hold into that. And then gradually come out of that. Just moving some keys around. Testing some stuff. Kind of want to lead with the head. We stay down there a little bit longer. I'm holding shift to move those up and remember to lock them in position. So let's move this here. Really going for it. Best animation ever. All right, let's test it. You see how quickly that we're moving. Like, I'm not creating a brand new run animation, having to cycle the legs, having to do a lot to, put that oomph into the upper body and stuff. Like, that goes a long way. And what are we, 29 minutes in? You can push it further, like what I did. You can take it to control rig if you want, do something fancier. But I would say only if you're not getting what you want out of this. If you do that and you feel confident that that feels good, players play it and they're like, they don't say anything. A lot of times, like, Silence is acceptance sometimes. Um, at the very least, it doesn't bother them. So, or there might be just other things that are kind of, more bothersome, so they don't notice that. That's our old one, which is the one I'll keep. So we'll stop it there, and then we'll work on, because I do want to create a brand new one that we will use for Sprint Stop. In the next video, we'll work on a new one from Sprint Stop, and I'll do that one um, in Control Rig. Okay, well, thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you enjoyed that process, and happy animating out there.